Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! Hunter's grip loosened, and the wrench tumbled from his grasp, its metallic clatter echoing in the quiet auto shop. With a weary exhale, he brushed greasy strands of hair from his forehead, leaving a temporary streak of oil on his skin. The familiar aroma of motor oil and grease filled the air like an old friend as he surveyed the disorganized sanctuary that had become his daily refuge. Half a year had passed since fate, in the form of an unexpected inheritance, had handed him the keys to his uncle's business. The weight of responsibility bore down on his shoulders, as though he were Atlas carrying the world. Customers sought the stereotypical mechanic, a rugged, intuitive problem solver, and Hunter embodied that persona. Yet an imposter syndrome whispered doubts in his ears. His gaze flickered to the dirty wall clock, its hands relentless as they marked passing seconds and minutes. With a mix of relief and trepidation, Hunter began cleaning up his tools. As he worked, his mind drifted to the other life waiting for him at home. One where grease-stained coveralls were exchanged for soft fabrics and delicate lace. The drive home was a blur of streetlights and honking horns. Hunter's fingers tapped an impatient rhythm on the steering wheel as anticipation built within him. Finally, he pulled into the driveway of his modest suburban home and hurried inside. The house was quiet and dark as he entered, towing off his work boots by the door. Hunter made his way to the bedroom, shedding his grimy clothes along the way. He stood before the full-length mirror, studying his reflection. Broad shoulders, muscular arms, stubbled jaw. With practiced movements, he began his transformation. First came the close shave, erasing any trace of stubble. Then foundation to smooth his complexion, followed by a light dusting of powder. False lashes fluttered as he applied them carefully. A swipe of pink lipstick completed the facial routine. Hunter opened his closet, pushing aside flannel shirts and worn jeans to reveal the hidden treasures beyond. His hand reached out, caressing soft fabrics before selecting a pink satin dress adorned with delicate lace trim. He slipped it on, relishing the cool whisper of material against his skin. A blonde wig completed the metamorphosis. Hunter, now Ruby, twirled before the mirror, watching the skirt flare out around shapely legs encased in sheer stockings. For a moment, all the stress and expectations of the day melted away. Here, in the privacy of home, Ruby could simply exist. The reverie was broken by the chiming of Ruby's phone. A reminder flashed on the screen. An appointment with a new client. With a mixture of excitement and nerves, Ruby gathered cleaning supplies and headed out. The idea had started as a lark, advertising discreet housekeeping services performed by a maid in full costume. To Ruby's surprise, there was a real market for it. Some clients seemed to get a thrill from the novelty, while others simply appreciated having their homes cleaned by someone who took pride in their appearance. Tonight's client lived in an upscale neighborhood, all manicured lawns and gleaming SUVs in driveways. Ruby pulled up in front of a large colonial-style house, double-checking the address before exiting the car. Smoothing down the pink satin skirt, Ruby took a deep breath and approached the front door. A middle-aged woman answered Ruby's knock, eyes widening slightly at the sight of the maid uniform.
"Oh, you must be... Ruby, was it? Come in, please."
Ruby stepped inside, offering a polite curtsy.
"Yes, ma'am. I'm here to take care of your cleaning needs this evening."
The woman nodded, a hint of amusement in her eyes.
"Well, I must say, you certainly look the part. The kitchen and living room are my main priorities tonight.
I'll be upstairs if you need anything. Left alone, Ruby set to work with efficient movements. The routine was soothing, wiping down counters, mopping floors, dusting shelves. Time seemed to slip away as Ruby lost herself in the task at hand. So focused was Ruby on polishing a particularly stubborn spot on the kitchen floor that the sound of a throat clearing came as a complete surprise. Ruby whirled around, nearly losing balance on the slippery surface. A man stood in the doorway, briefcase in hand, and tie loosened at his neck. His eyes widened as he took in the sight before him. Ruby on hands and knees, pink satin dress hiked up to reveal a tantalizing glimpse of stocking-clad thigh. Recognition hit them both simultaneously. The man was a regular customer at Hunter's auto shop, Mr. Peterson, if memory served correctly. Ruby scrambled to stand, tugging the skirt back into place.
I'm sorry,
Mr. Peterson stammered.
I didn't realize my wife had hired services.
Ruby's heart pounded, mind racing for a way out of this predicament. Sir, I can explain. But Mr. Peterson was already backing out of the room, calling for his wife. Ruby heard muffled voices from upstairs, then rapid footsteps descending. Panic threatened to overwhelm as Ruby contemplated fleeing, but pride kept those pink heels firmly planted on the kitchen tile. The woman reappeared, followed closely by her flustered husband. Her expression was a mix of confusion and curiosity. Ruby, my husband seems to think he recognizes you. Is that possible? Taking a deep breath, Ruby made a split-second decision. With trembling hands, the blonde wig was removed, revealing Hunter's tousled hair beneath. Mrs. Peterson, Mr. Peterson, I owe you both an explanation. What followed was an awkward but surprisingly candid conversation. Hunter explained about inheriting the auto shop, the pressure to maintain a certain image, and how this cleaning service had started as a way to express a different side of himself. To his immense relief, the Petersons listened without judgment. Mrs. Peterson even chuckled, remarking that she'd never had such an interesting evening at home before. Mr. Peterson cleared his throat.
Well, I have to say, this is unexpected. But Hunter, or Ruby, whichever you prefer, you've always done right by me at the shop. And clearly, you do good work here too.
He gestured at the gleaming kitchen around them. We won't say anything, Mrs. Peterson added kindly. Your secret is safe with us, though I must admit, I'm dying to know where you found that adorable dress. The tension in the room dissipated, replaced by tentative laughter. As Hunter finished the cleaning job, wig back in place, fully in Ruby mode, a weight seemed to lift from his shoulders. For the first time since inheriting the business, he felt truly seen and accepted. In the weeks that followed, Hunter found himself opening up more. He confided in a few trusted friends about his double life, surprised by their support and acceptance. At the auto shop, he began incorporating small changes. A hint of clear nail polish here, a more fitted uniform there. The maid service continued to thrive, with Ruby gaining a reputation for meticulous work and charming personality. Hunter discovered that many of his clients appreciated the discretion and lack of judgment he offered. After all, he had his own secrets to keep. One sunny afternoon, as Hunter was elbow-deep in an engine repair, Mr. Peterson's car pulled into the shop. Hunter tensed momentarily, but the older man's friendly wave put him at ease.
Just here for an oil change,
Mr. Peterson said casually. Then, leaning in conspiratorially, he added,
Though I was wondering if Ruby might be available this weekend. The missus is hosting a book club, and she's been raving about how spotless the house was last time.
Hunter couldn't help but grin.
I think that can be arranged, sir. Ruby would be happy to help out.
As Mr. Peterson's car pulled away, Hunter felt a sense of contentment wash over him. The road ahead might not always be smooth, but for now, he'd found a balance between the different facets of his life. And really, wasn't that what mattered most? The weeks turned into months, and Hunter settled into a rhythm that felt both exhilarating and comfortable. By day, he continued to run the auto repair shop with the same efficiency and skill that had made his uncle proud. His hands, though still calloused from years of mechanical work, now bore a subtle sheen of clear polish, a small concession to his evolving sense of self. Evenings and weekends often found Ruby making her rounds, pink satin dress swishing as she moved from house to house. The cleaning service had grown beyond Hunter's wildest expectations, with a loyal clientele that appreciated both Ruby's attention to detail and her discretion. It was on a crisp autumn evening that Hunter received a call that would challenge the delicate balance he'd achieved. The voice on the other end belonged to Carol, a longtime customer of the auto shop and a pillar of the local business community.
"Hunter, darling!"
Carol's voice crackled through the phone.
"I'm in a bit of a bind. The cleaning service I usually use for my annual charity gala has canceled at the last minute. I remember you mentioning once that you had connections in that industry.
Any chance you could recommend someone? The event is this Saturday."
Hunter's stomach did a somersault. The annual charity gala was one of the biggest events in town, attended by virtually everyone who was anyone in local society. It was an opportunity Ruby could hardly pass up, but it also presented a significant risk of exposure.
"I might know someone," Hunter said cautiously. "Let me make a few calls and get back to you."
After hanging up, Hunter paced the length of his living room, mind racing. Taking on such a high-profile job as Ruby could open doors to an entirely new level of clientele, but it also meant being in a room full of people who knew Hunter from the auto shop. The chance of someone recognizing him, even in full Ruby attire, was not insignificant. In the end, the allure of the opportunity won out over caution. Hunter called Carol back and confirmed that Ruby would be available to clean before and during the gala. The next few days were a flurry of preparation, pressing the pink satin uniform to perfection, touching up the blonde wig, and mentally rehearsing how to interact with guests who might be more inquisitive than Ruby's usual clients. Saturday evening arrived all too quickly. Hunter parked a block away from Carol's sprawling mansion and completed his transformation into Ruby with shaking hands. The weight of the cleaning supplies in his arms felt like armor as he approached the service entrance. Carol greeted Ruby with a harried smile, quickly running through a list of tasks that needed to be completed before guests began to arrive. Ruby set to work immediately, losing herself in the familiar routine of dusting, polishing, and arranging. By the time the first guests started to trickle in, the mansion was gleaming. As the gala got into full swing, Ruby circulated unobtrusively through the crowded rooms, collecting empty glasses and wiping up spills. Most guests paid little attention to the maid in pink satin, too engrossed in their conversations and the free-flowing champagne. It was during a quiet moment, as Ruby was replacing hand towels in one of the guest bathrooms, that disaster nearly struck. The door opened, and in walked Thomas, one of Hunter's regular customers at the auto shop. Their eyes met in the mirror, and for a heart-stopping moment, Ruby was certain the game was up. But Thomas merely smiled politely, waiting for Ruby to finish her task. As she hurried past him to exit, he said,
"Excuse me, miss. I couldn't help but notice. Your eyes look remarkably like those of my mechanic. You wouldn't happen to have a brother in the auto repair business, would you?"
Ruby's mind raced. This was it, the moment of truth. Taking a deep breath, She turned to face Thomas with a coy smile. You know, sir, I get that a lot. Must be something in the water around here. Now, if you'll excuse me. Duty calls. With that, Ruby slipped out of the bathroom, heart pounding. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of nervous energy and heightened awareness. Every laugh, every glance in her direction seemed loaded with potential recognition. As the last guests departed and Carol bid Ruby a grateful goodnight, the weight of the evening's deception settled heavily. The drive home was filled with conflicting emotions. Pride at a job well done, exhilaration at having successfully navigated such a high-stakes situation, and a gnawing sense that perhaps this double life was becoming unsustainable. The following Monday at the auto shop, Hunter found himself jumping at every customer interaction, half expecting someone to call him out. But life went on as usual. Oil changes, brake repairs, the occasional compliment on how unusually clean his fingernails were for a mechanic. It was Mr. Peterson who finally broached the subject, having stopped by for a routine maintenance check. As Hunter was ringing up his bill, the older man leaned in conspiratorially. You know, I was at Carol's gala on Saturday. Couldn't help but notice the maid looked awfully familiar. Pink really is your color, my boy. Hunter froze, credit card slip forgotten in his hand. But Mr. Peterson's eyes held no judgment, only a twinkle of amusement and something that might have been admiration. I don't know what to say, Hunter stammered. Mr. Peterson placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. You don't have to say anything. Just know that you've got more supporters in this town than you might think. It takes courage to be true to yourself, especially in a place like this. You should be proud. As Mr. Peterson drove away, Hunter felt a curious mix of emotions welling up inside him. The fear of discovery that had been his constant companion for so long began to give way to something else. A tentative hope that perhaps he didn't have to choose between his two lives, after all. Over the next few weeks, Hunter began to notice subtle changes in the way some of his auto shop customers interacted with him. There were knowing smiles, the occasional comment about how versatile his skills must be, and even a few discreet inquiries about Ruby's availability for cleaning services. Rather than feeling exposed or vulnerable, Hunter found himself embracing this new openness. He started incorporating more of Ruby's mannerisms into his day-to-day life at the shop. A softer tone of voice here, a more graceful movement there. To his surprise and delight, business didn't suffer. If anything, customers seemed to appreciate the more approachable, multifaceted person Hunter was becoming. The true turning point came on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. A sleek sports car pulled into the shop, driven by a woman Hunter recognized as a local business owner he'd often admired from afar. She stepped out, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, and approached the counter with purposeful strides.
You must be Hunter,
she said, extending a manicured hand. I'm Evelyn Reeves. I've heard quite a bit about you, both your skill with engines and your other talents. Hunter shook her hand, feeling a blush creep up his neck. It's a pleasure to meet you, Ms. Reeves. What can I help you with today? Evelyn's lips curved into a knowing smile. Well, that depends. I'm actually here on behalf of a group of local entrepreneurs. We're putting together a charity calendar, featuring business owners, showcasing unexpected sides of themselves. We were hoping you might be interested in participating. Hunter's mind reeled at the implications. You mean, as Ruby? Evelyn nodded. Exactly. Your story is inspiring, Hunter. Balancing two successful businesses, being true to yourself in a town that's not always known for its open-mindedness. That's exactly the kind of spirit we want to celebrate. For a moment, Hunter was speechless. The idea of publicly embracing both sides of himself was both terrifying and exhilarating. He thought of all the nights spent worrying about discovery, all the careful compartmentalization of his life. And then he thought of Mr. Peterson's words, "You should be proud." Taking a deep breath, Hunter met Evelyn's gaze.
You know what? I'd be honored to participate.
The day of the calendar shoot arrived with a mix of nervous energy and excited anticipation. The auto shop had been transformed, with professional lighting set up around a classic car Hunter had been restoring. In one hand, he held a wrench. In the other, a feather duster. He wore his pink satin maid's uniform, but with the addition of a grease-smeared apron. As the photographer snapped away, Hunter felt a sense of liberation wash over him. Here he was, both Hunter and Ruby, mechanic and maid, fully integrated and unapologetically himself. The calendar was an unexpected hit, selling out its first print run within days. Hunter found himself featured in local news stories, hailed as an example of authenticity and entrepreneurial spirit. The auto shop saw an uptick in business, with customers driving from neighboring towns just to meet the famous mechanic Maid. Ruby's cleaning service expanded too, with Hunter hiring and training a small staff of individuals who, like him, found freedom and empowerment in donning a maid's uniform. He made sure each employee felt safe and supported, creating a workplace where diversity was celebrated. 1 year after inheriting his uncle's shop, Hunter stood in front of the building, surveying the changes. A new sign hung above the door, reading, "Hunter and Ruby's Auto Care and Cleaning Services." It wasn't the future he had envisioned, but as he straightened his pink bow tie and prepared to greet the day's first customer, Hunter knew it was exactly where he was meant to be. The bell above the door chimed as a young woman entered, looking nervous and a bit out of place. Hunter recognized the look. It was one he'd worn himself not so long ago.
Welcome,
he said warmly.
I'm Hunter, or Ruby, depending on the day. How can we help you find your shine today?
As the woman's face lit up with relief and understanding, Hunter silently thanked his uncle for leaving him not just a business, but the opportunity to create a legacy of his own, one built on authenticity, acceptance, and the courage to be oneself in a world that often demands conformity. And so, with grease-stained hands and a feather duster tucked into his apron pocket, Hunter embarked on another day of balancing engines and dust bunnies, wrenches and frilly aprons. It wasn't always easy, but it was undeniably, wonderfully his.
Thanks for watching my girlies. Be sure to check out Patreon for more.